Thank you very much, first of all, Jane, for inviting me. I'm thrilled to be here and to present what really seems a continuation of what you just were talking about. And I must also apologize, I misread the itinerary at the exhibit. I started with the periphery and ended with the center, thinking that the center was the periphery and the periphery the center. But but I enjoyed the exhibit a lot. It was a lot of fun. It was wonderful to see all those maps. So here you actually see a little detail of one of the maps that I will discuss, one of the Renaissance maps. And I would like to start with a little blurb, with a little quotation that I found on the homepage for your exhibit from a banner. So here is the quotation. The revival of ancient geographic knowledge between the 14th and 16th centuries coincided with intense contemporary interest in explorations beyond Europe. This phenomenon contributed to the increased production of manuscripts and early printed books that focused on geography. And this is exactly that moment that I'm very interested in, namely the Renaissance period, when scholars and humanists were looking at ancient maps and ancient geographers such as Ptolemy, and at the same time discovering new territories that completely contradicted what the ancient had said about our geographic knowledge and about our territories. So I'm very interested in that particular moment that precisely happened during the 15th and the 16th centuries. So I'm actually very interested in this kind of double translation that happened. And you were talking, Roberta, about the translation, how to translate, knowledge for an audience at an exhibit. And I'm particularly interested in the moment when Ptolemy was translated from the Greek, which was the original language the geography was written in the 2nd century Common Era, into Latin. In the early 15th century, so it was translated. It was brought actually from Byzantium, where Byzantine scholars found manuscripts and brought them at around 1400 to Florence, and then a particular humanist, Jacopo Angeli da Scarperia, translated Ptolemy from Greek into Latin, and then toward the 1470s, the Latin Ptolemy was translated sometimes in verse form, like Dante's Inferno, Dante's Commedia, into Latin, and then it was subsequently translated into other European vernaculars. So this is the one translation that I'm interested in, the linguistic translation, and the other is the visual translation, because Ptolemy, as we heard already, was known without maps. So when the Byzantine maps arrived from Byzantium around 1400 to Florence, humanists thought that these were actually the original maps. Although these maps were just from the 12th or the 13th century, made by Byzantine scholars and brought to Western Europe. So there was a new moment of discovery of Ptolemy that coincided with the humanistic movement and the humanists' mission of kind of investigate and translate Ptolemy and to visualize him. And that was a very complex endeavor, because as we've already seen, Scandinavia does not exist in Ptolemy, and of course the new territories didn't exist. So the New World didn't exist. Ptolemy also thought that the Indian Ocean, for example, was an enclosed ocean, as we've seen on the 15th century map. And I would like to present one particular map that you are probably familiar with. It's a map that is now at the National Gallery in DC, and it shows the New World as a sliver. You can see this is basically as it was known in 1507. And why this map is well known. Martin Waldseemüller invented here the word America for the first time. It's the first map that contains the word America on a map. And it's strange, it's South America, not North America, so it's located on the South American continent. And what I would like to focus on here is something very interesting. So this map actually is called a transitional or synthetic map. And why that is, it's because, as we will look closer in a second, we already have the depiction of the New World as it was discovered by Vespucci and Columbus, and yet the Old World, as we've heard, is represented according to Ptolemy. So we have two authorities that shape Renaissance mapping. One is Ptolemy and the ancients, and one are the contemporary navigators and sailors, and they're actually represented here on top of the map. So this is Ptolemy, and I will give you a close-up in a second, and this is Vespucci. So we basically see Ptolemy looking at the oikumene, the known world, so basically containing the three continents as they were known to the ancients, Europe, Asia, and Africa. And then we have Vespucci, coined after whom was the continent was named, who looks to the west. So this is a phenomenal co-presence of completely contradictory sources. And of course, Vespucci looks at a continent that has not yet been discovered. So that is really fascinating. We see just a little sliver. And as a matter of fact, in 1492, Martin Behaim created the first globe, which was before Columbus really came back from the first voyage from the New World. And the new globe, the first globe really also looks like that. So we have just a kind of island sort of shape, contour floating in the ocean, and we really don't know, is that Taprobana? Is this already a new continent? Is there something between Europe and Asia or not? So that is a very fascinating period. And so again, just very briefly, while the West represents the New World, I want to focus now on Eastern Europe. And I have a close-up of Eastern Europe. And you see here a mountain chain through what is nowadays Poland and the Baltic states, and Ukraine. And it's very interesting to see that here's another close-up of that mountain chain. The names that we read here is Sarmatia Europea, which means European Sarmatia, which was a name used by Ptolemy to define the eastern boundaries of Europe. And so we see how problematic the terminology was. Scholars had no idea how to translate and locate ancient toponyms on early modern maps. That was really a problem, and I'm very interested in this kind of really operatic moments in the transmission of knowledge that really show how disruptive the process of mapping and of cartographic representation was for centuries. So we have here this strange mountain chain. We have here something that is called the Arii Caesari, so the altars of Caesar that in antiquity marked the boundaries of the East. And we see here a word, namely Rifei Montes. the Riphean Mountains that completely block the passage between Asia and Central Europe, that Martin Waldseemüller chose to put on the map that is considered a highly modern map that for the first time uses the word America. And I want to share with you a passage from Ptolemy, where Ptolemy says European Sarmatia is terminated on the north by the Sarmatian Ocean adjoining the Venedicus Bay and by a part of the unknown land. The terminus of Sarmatia, which extends southward through the sources of the Tanais River, is 64-63. It is terminated in the west by the Vistula River and that part of Germania lying between its source and the Sarmatian Mountains, but not by the mountains themselves. Sarmatia is divided by other mountains, which are called Pusey Mountains, Amadosi Mountains, Bodinus Mountains, Alanus Mountains, Carpathian Mountains, as we call them, Venedici Mountains, Ripae Mountains. So what Ptolemy does, he has a whole catalog of mountains that were entirely fictitious. They did not exist. And what happened in the Renaissance period is that cartographers tried to reproduce those fictitious mountains on maps. And so while on the one hand, people like Waldseemüller was this completely modern man who incorporated the New World, who knew about, of course, Vespucci, Columbus, and all those endeavors, he stuck to the terminology presented by and proposed by Ptolemy. So we have here another map. This is this is a map upon which Waldseemüller based his description of Eastern Europe. And again, we see this map is, by the way, nowadays in the National Library of Warsaw. And again, we see the Riphean Mountains here crossing Europe, and we see the Tanais River that originates in the mountains, because according to Greek geographers, rivers naturally had to originate in mountains. So in order to adequately represent rivers, there had to be mountains as this kind of prosthesis. And so what happened is that this image of the Riphean Mountains continued throughout the 16th century. So we see really this discontinuity in cartographic representation, all those errors in transmission and translation and location. And this is a guy that I work a lot on, Maciej Miechowita, who was the first humanist actually from Krakow, who debunked Ptolemy, who said that in 1517 he said there are no Riphean mountains. Poland is flat because Pole in Polish means field, so there can't be any mountains there. That was his reasoning, but he was right that Ptolemy was wrong about the Eastern European description of Europe. But despite the fact, the cartographic representations of the Riphean Mountains continued throughout the century. And so we see that while the Renaissance period was this exciting period that really complicated and the relationship between the word and the image, and philology was thriving, it also introduced a lot of mistakes and errors through translation and visualization that really substantially shaped the nature of Renaissance cartography. So thank you.